La realidad virtual permite ingresar a un universo ficticio del que podés formar parte, e incluso ser protagonista. Tal como la conocemos, la realidad virtual comenzó en la década del 50 con la creación del prototipo sensorama, que permitía al espectador visualizar 5 pequeñas películas, mientras sus otros sentidos también recibían estímulos. A partir de entonces, la realidad virtual no ha parado de evolucionar y hoy se encuentra ampliamente diversificada, utilizándose en diferentes áreas como la medicina, la aviación y el cine. Hoy en Toquin TEC hablaremos con la antropóloga Naomi Roth sobre cómo la realidad virtual nos permite conocer otras realidades y nos ayuda a comprender mejor nuestro sentido de la identidad.
Well, Naomi, thank you so much for coming. And I understand you're going to be part of Metamorphosis in the next couple of days, and I really wanted to know how would you like to be introduced, like in a few words.
I introduce myself like an explorer of realities.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, why?
Why? Because virtual reality, which is my focus, allows us to visit a lot of different realities and to better understand how we are related to our own sense of reality, what it is, identity, etc. So this is why I found this way of introducing me, maybe.
Oh, it's really interesting, and well, learning more about how one identify ourselves, and also as a part of like a society, and specifically as a culture, right? You actually have some studies from anthropology, right? Where
yes. I started in anthropology and then I moved to journalism. It was the more efficient way for me to get closer to humans and to get to know them from the inside, to get to know other realities and write for other people, for them to have access to them too.
And for how long did you work in journalism?
Actually for 4 years, because when I started my studies, I was working for one of my professors. He was working for Nice Matin, which is the daily news of the places where I lived. And he told me, if you want to work with us, come. So as I was studying, I was already working as a journalist.
So you were like avoiding all these cultures from a very objective place, right? You were watching communities as journalists from outside? Or?
Not from outside, actually, from the inside. It was all about getting the closer possible to the persons and to get their confidence and to try to understand the better their conditions and to transfer it and to transcribe it to the audience. And it's all about respect as well, because you don't want to go too far in the confidence of the person, because sometimes people tell you a lot of things and they won't specify this is off the radar, and you have to sense it. So yes, it was again getting closer to the people.
And how did you manage to go from anthropology to journalism to community builder? Like, what was like this whole amazing journey about?
It was a journey, as you said it. It's a lot about serendipity and passion, because from an early age, I was born on the French island, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and it's called the Réunion because you have all the people around the Indian Ocean that comes to live here. And so I grew up with a lot of different cultures around me, and I got passionate about different cultures. And as I was stuck on an island, I really wanted to go out in the world and say, hey, wait for me, I want to understand what's happening. And so anthropology was my first choice, but I had to move on. And journalism, it's about, okay, I'm too curious. I'm really too curious naturally. So I want to be legitimate to ask every question I have in mind to the people. So journalism was the best for me. And when I moved to Paris, actually, I was working for television and I was doing some documentaries and things. And I just realized that it was really hard for me to to address the questions that I had in mind, the questions that I was passionate about. So I just started to look for an alternative to reach my goals, and I discovered VR. And it just...
And how did that happen? Like...
Again, it's serendipity. I was walking in the streets of Paris, and I was giving a tour to a friend, and I just seen a guy walking by on the parvis of Notre Dame, and he was just hanging around with a 360 camera and a beret, you know. And I just, wow, you look like an alien. I want to know you. I want to understand what you are doing here. And so we had a cafe, and he showed me my first VR content, and it just slapped me in the face. And as I was very passionate about neuroscience at that time, I just wanted to understand what it did to my brain, what it did to me, and I wanted to understand the potential of it. And he told me, okay, if you want, in 2 days, you can be a volunteer on the first VR World Tour. It begins in Paris. It's in 2 days. Maybe there are still room for you if you want to join. And like, okay, definitely. And so 2 days after...
the Kaleidoscope VR tour?
Kaleidoscope VR tour, exactly. 2
and
days
what
after.
was it about? Because it's...
It was about demonstrating virtual reality to the most person, a lot of persons. For them to have the first contact with virtual reality and to show them the potential of this technology.
And how was the experience? Like how did you approach them? Like what was the installation about?
In fact, they had 10 dates. So it was a world tour, so it was beginning in Paris, then they had London, they had Cologne, Berlin, Amsterdam, etc. And so there were a location, and the public goes in, and you have a lot of Samsung Gear VR, and you put it on their head, and you just let them enjoy virtual reality. So it was much like this.
And which were like the most interesting reactions that you've seen with these people that were experiencing VR for the first time?
People cried.
Whoa.
People crying for Notes on Blindness. It's a very moving piece. It's about an artist. He is losing sight, and he's recording his voice. He do like a notebook, but with his voice, and he says everything that is changing for him, and it's very, very moving. And there is especially this chapter that is called Cognition is Beautiful, and you are into a room and it's raining outside, and you hear the world like he is, and it's very poetic, and it's a new world. And I had big guy crying on this one. It was my best part.
So VR, it's moving. VR, it's reaching
Yes.
people in a new and very personal way.
Exactly, in a new, very emotional, personal way. It raises empathy for any subject you can imagine. It's really, it's the first time that you can really jump into the shoes of another. I mean, before we had empathy, which is a great tool, but it's only imagining yourself in the shoes of another person. But when you are immersed in virtual reality, you are this person, and everything is happening directly to you, and so it changes everything. It changes the perspective and the paradigm.
Especially one, it's super close to its own experiences, so through empathy you are actually maybe living something you would never ever imagine could happen to someone.
Exactly. For example, you can jump into a refugee camp, and when they look at you, they don't look into the dead eye of a camera. They look directly into your eyes because you are the camera. So it's totally different. Totally different.
It's like in Jurassic Park, I think we were talking with some friends earlier,
yes.
like, that you are so focused in proving that you can create
Yes.
something that maybe you're not asking if you should.
Exactly.
Have you experienced any VR game, or maybe just an
Yes.
experience that maybe you thought like, well, this is completely
Yes.
unnecessary?
Exactly. For example, in entertainment, I've been in contact with an experience where you are virtually, 200 feet high, and they push you out of the elevator, and you have to walk over like this wooden thing, and when you arrive at the end of it, it breaks. And so you fall for 200 meters, and at the end, they just force your vision to look to the sky. So I'm still facing the, before me, but my vision is seeing behind me. And when I took off the headset, I just felt so sick for 4 hours. So sick. I was like, I don't know where my reality is. I don't know if I'm walking, if I'm going to faint. It was very bizarre because my whole senses were violently, confronted to this big fall. I was not prepared, and it was very intense for me. And I've seen people screaming, fainting, jumping on the floor with this experience. And so I felt like, why would you like us to feel like that? It's not okay. It's not because it's entertainment that it's gonna be okay to put everyone in any kind of situations. I think that you can, and it's not only me. You can definitely traumatize people with virtual reality. You can implement false memories. So you can have a great or very bad time with this technology.
And do you think that it impacts all cultures the same? Like, have you, when you were traveling, for example, in Europe, or when you went outside, for example, here in Latin America, what do you think, or what have you seen people reacting like?
It's a great question.
I don't know. I've seen anthropologists, for example, showing 360 videos to Aborigines in the Amazon, and they wouldn't understand even the screen because their whole world is 3D. So they couldn't understand what was going on in a tiny image. So I was thinking, like, well, maybe for them it would be experiencing a huge city like, I don't know, New York or London. But then is it necessary? What is going to provoke them? Like, what is going to be the outcome of exposing all these different cultures to what we in the Western world think it's cool, I don't know, or is entertaining, or it's fun?
So that's interesting because it's a particular niche. When you talk about Aborigines, for example, and showing them big cities, I don't really see the point if they didn't ask for it. But for example, if you talk about protected areas or natural environments that are being destroyed by human activity or climate change, it's going to be very interesting to have 360 records of those environments to be able to study them later when they will be gone, when it's finished. And for the cultural approach you asked, it's interesting because I've been mostly in contact with, tech adopters, tech lovers. So I'd say that it's mondialized. It's a global culture, the tech lovers. So
and we are still in love with the technology, right? So it's a celebration.
Yes, it's a celebration for them. It's like, ooh, we did it, finally. So yes, I don't know really if it's.
Do you think it's going to change more than the culture? That it's going to affect industries, for example?
Oh, it's going to affect industries, tourism, education. It's going to affect our cognition as well, because we know that the brain doesn't work exactly the same in virtual reality than in reality. So it's going to be...
And how it works differently? Like...
It works differently, for example, with your map of a place, the way you understand the environment. And if you look at the brainwaves, you'll see that they are firing, your neurons are firing way more hectically than you will do in the real world. So the activity, it has been studied on rodents, and it's very interesting because it was the first study to demonstrate that it has an impact on the way you just, compute reality, really.
Oh, it's amazing.
So it's going to change.
Yeah, it's kind of scary at the same time. Like, I don't know, are you awakening a part of your brain? Like, what is going on? Like...
where I think we will just learn to use it differently. And this is the part of this is interesting to me, is that technologies are good to show us the way we behave, the way we work as a species, you know. So it's going to be very interesting to see how virtual reality unveil some maybe capabilities we have or relation we can have to different subjects.
And I wanted to ask you a different question, like why do you think, you know, like the VR technology has been around for like 30 years already, like why is it being adopted massively right now? Like,
oh, because now we have a way better quality than we had before, and because the headsets are way cheaper too. So, and I think, I mean, everything that started the VR area, it was when Mark Zuckerberg bought Oculus in 2014. So this is really the science that we were waiting for to open the markets and to dig into it again.
It's amazing. So I was really interested in talking with you about what do you think are the main trends right now in VR? Because it seems like an limitless, right? Like an unlimited tool to do whatever we wanted. But it seems that we are still doing like a little of everything that we could do.
So the trends of this year is user input VR. So it's a mix between, for example, virtual reality and artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. So you can control a virtual environment with your voice or other things, other inputs, for example, your brainwaves, etc. And those are the trends. The trends are to give more and more senses to virtual reality, to be more immersed, more coherent in the experience you will live.
And you were expressing your concern about how this could be dangerous, right? Because if someone is actually also retrieving information from your brain waves or, I don't know, your heart rhythm, your blood pressure.
Yes.
It's like you are responding to a stimuli and how that could be dangerous.
Well, we will know you at a level that is more intimate than ever, because if we have access to your brainwaves, if we know how you react because we are watching your facial expressions, if you are equipped to move with your whole body, we can know about your kinesphere, so the way you move, and if you cross those datas, we can recognize you without your face, actually. Oh, you are this person, you are sensitive to this content, and when you are in relation to this content, you do this thing with your face, with your brain, with your body, etc. So it's going to be a W into virtual reality that is going to be studied for good, of course. It's going to be very interesting for a lot of diseases, it's going to be interesting in a lot of different applications, but it can be also dangerous if, for example, we say mass surveillance, for example.
Well, it can be like super Skynet scary, right? Like
no, sorry, it's big words. We don't like this one, but we must know that it can be used. I mean, it's just a data, so if someone knows something on you, it can be used. But I mean, it's not bad in itself. As I said, it's going to be very interesting, for example, to study Alzheimer, to study Parkinson, to study a lot of,
you were talking about
conditions.
Rehab, right? Like
rehabilitation as well, yes, to train people in their homes rather the need for them to go to the hospital, etc. And you can then send the data and how fast they move through the rehabilitation to the doctor, etc. So those types of applications are possible too, and people are working on it, so it's very interesting too.
Yes. And well, preparing for this interview, I saw this line that I wanted to ask you what it meant. You said that as experience makers, citizens are pursuing new solutions and concrete applications to create a sustainable and ethical future. What were you talking about?
Which part? The ethical futures?
Yes,
or
the ethical and the sustainable.
Okay, for example, in virtual reality, you can show realities that does not exist yet. So if I construct a building and I want you to experiment it, or if I construct a new kind of city and I want you to see how it could work and how it could work well, I will invite you to join into virtual reality and experience it for yourself. So ethical futures, you can try them into virtual reality before even trying to get them into the public and say, okay, this is the future, you have to believe it. No, just invite them and say, this is one possible future. Do you like it? Do you want to work in this direction, etc.? So this is a possible application for virtual reality, is to show some futures and to try to choose between them the one we like the most and we want to share the most.
That's a very interesting way to see it, right? To actually share visions. Maybe in the past you needed someone to just sit down and be a very skillful writer to actually, you know, like transport you into their idea of what the world could be. But now you can actually
put someone on them
with a headset and just have them live it.
And more persons will have access to these realities because you can share them very easily. Just need a headset and an application, and then everyone can access it.
And everyone can access also to the content creative process, right? It's never been easier to just have a computer and maybe a phone, and
it's
that's
getting easier to create for virtual reality. Yes.
What do you think could be like a good advice for people that are trying to go into this medium?
Well, a good advice.
It
Because
could be technical, but it could be also content related. Where is your audience? Like, where can you find them easily?
Okay. If I may respond this, is that I don't think the question is where is the easy audience, but where is your niche? Because there is more and more funding for VR for impact, for example. So what problem do you want to address? Do you think that virtual reality will help? And so, if you think the answer is yes, just go for it. Meet people from the industry, connect to the people over the internet. They are really welcoming because it's a small world within virtual reality lovers. So you can reach anyone and ask questions and see if you have a role to play in this industry.
Well, Naomi, thank you so much for coming all the way to Argentina and sharing your passion. It's really an very interesting field you're focusing on. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hope you have a nice time here.
Thank you very much.